This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. Part of our economic development, community development, and land use planning initiatives here in Dover has been recognizing the value of our open spaces and recognizing that you can't develop everything and that things need to be preserved and protected. Today, we're going to speak with Bill Hunt from the Conservation Commission and Anna Boudreau of the Open Lands Committee, two volunteers who have served over 20 years in those capacities, really promoting that balance in a variety of roles. Welcome. How are you two today?
Great.
Good. Bill, why don't you start us off? Who are you and why are you on the Conservation Commission?
I've been a resident of Dover since 1975, and I taught middle school in Dover, beginning in 1975, and I retired in 2007 after many years with middle school grades, which I enjoyed and was very rewarding. And then while in education, I also decided to see what could be done about helping preserve the natural resources of the city. I own a farm on Back Road in Dover. Currently, we board horses. And our property is also in a conservation easement as well that went into effect in 2007. Along with help from the Open Lands Committee and Anna Boudreau and Tom Fargo, among others, to facilitate that. So I've had that interest in open spaces and land preservation for quite a while, and continue to do so in my role as chairman of the Conservation Commission in Dover.
Anna, how about you?
So I moved to Dover in 1989 and was actually a UNH Extension volunteer, and that's where I first heard about conservation easements. It was very intriguing to me because I had been in finance and estate planning, and back then people would literally lose their farms because of the estate taxes. So for whatever reason, of all the things I learned about trees and soil and farming, conservation easements were what I just dove right into. And as a result, I was put on a list of volunteers to reach out to, and I was asked to serve on the Conservation Commission. That really wasn't my jam. So we started talking about creating an Open Lands Committee, a separate committee just to focus on that. And that was in 1999 with Doug Deedy and Tom Fargo and others. And it took us about a year, but in 2000, the City Council officially blessed the Open Lands Committee. So I'm one of the founding members. I think I'm one of the last ones standing that were in the original group. Ann Reed might be, who turns 80. So just over the years, I was not the chair. I was in the background doing the work of talking with landowners. I was involved in Bill Hunt's protection of his farm, conservation of his farm, and have been at it ever since. I didn't know it would be a lifetime appointment. But I've just really enjoyed working with this. I work with a lot of other towns as well, and Dover is very good about balancing the need for more housing in the correct areas and conserving the natural resources that make that housing attractive and amenable to our survival.
The Conservation Commission, while it certainly works with the Open Lands Committee to expend the conservation funds on land preservation activities, it also performs an advisory role of the planning board on environmental conditional use permits. I find that the Conservation Commission provides a thoughtful overview and looks for reasonable and realistic opportunities and says, this lot's going to get developed. How can we make sure that that development is done in a reasonable and respectful manner and doesn't intrude upon the wildlife and the natural habitat that already exists any more than it needs to? Because it's going to intrude. That's the general baseline of development, is that it's affecting the environment it's existing in. But I think that the Conservation Commission is respected by the planning board because when they make recommendations, it's not a recommendation that is willy-nilly. It's a thoughtful and based on science and evidence as to why that should happen.
And I'd add to that we're fortunate, I believe, in most instances, as far as members of the board are concerned, or members of the commission are concerned, that many of them well-educated in terms of what we're expected to do and bring a wealth of knowledge and background to make some good, informed decisions to the planning board. And I certainly hope that that's helpful to the planning board when they have to make a final decision about a particular project.
I agree. I think in both of your cases, you've been lucky enough over the years to have volunteer members that are experts in their field and come pre-qualified. It's a passion level, but then it's also an education level with people that come to the table ready to speak and can speak intelligently and proactively. Anna, let's talk about the preservation side of things, because there's one thing to protect the environment through the regulatory that Bill was looking at. On your side, let's say I own a piece of land that I want to, as you said earlier, make sure that through my estate planning, it doesn't have to be sold.
Right.
How would I go about that process, or what's that process like from the Open Lands Committee's point of view?
Right. So from the Open Lands Committee side, like as you mentioned, Bill, the zoning and all, that's one tool to kind of try to preserve and protect. And the other tool is voluntary land conservation. That's where you actually voluntarily agree to work with either a municipality or a land trust to have them purchase your development rights for conservation values, not just development rights for the sake of, like, we have people call up and they want us to buy their backyard. We have criteria that they have to meet. So one of the first things the Open Lands Committee did, we, for 6 months, hashed out, what's our criteria? What are we trying to protect? Now, Dover has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to natural resources. How many rivers do we have, and forest, and farmland, and riparian river corridors? And we fought over, this one gets higher than this one, and we were trying to score it, and we had... So we developed that criteria, and we narrowed down the scoring to 3 points, or 4, 0. It's not there, to 3, it's there, and it's like got bells and whistles. And over the years, it has expanded, because in 1999, there wasn't the Wildlife Action Plan. There wasn't the Coastal Watershed Management Plan. As other scientists and smarter people than us came together with these reports, it was like, now we can point to why this scored so high. And those, I don't know if you remember the co-occurrence maps that we all got,
Yep.
Literally maps taped to the wall. And we got very excited when one came up, darker than the rest. So it's not just, we like this forest, it looks nice. It has to have some conservation value that the landowner is willingly transferring over. It's one thing that I always tell people when I first start talking to them, whether it's a Board of Selectmen group or a Conservation Commission or a landowner, it's a real estate transaction. And a lot of people don't know that. I even worked with a small land trust that will not be named up north, and the board did not understand it. You're actually purchasing an interest in the property. That's why it's a huge obligation. Sometimes city councilors or somebody will ask, what are we getting out of it? We're getting the liability of having to monitor it forever, but in return, you have all these other benefits. Flood mitigation,
Wildlife
habitat protection, exactly. Forest management, being allowed.
Viewshed.
Farmland. Pardon?
Viewshed,
right. Sometimes people are like, I don't care. It's not that they don't care about turning on the water. They think that just happens. Well, you don't want to be a Flint, Michigan. That's the extreme. But there are a lot of benefits to all of us. But some of them is just, I like to drive down and see Bill Hunt's farm instead of a subdivision. But there has to be a balance. I don't live in the woods. I live in a small subdivision. So I've been really appreciative of Dover, the planning department's support in conservation versus development. Because, I work for Our Place, New Hampshire, a new nonprofit that's tried to establish housing for young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We need that housing. And so we don't want to shut everyone out. And I'm also thinking now with my Open Lands Committee hat, wouldn't it be nice if we could get some of those young people out on a trail with their power wheelchair? So now my mind is kind of going a whole nother, my two worlds are colliding. But also to speak to Bill's point about looking at plans, now I'm going to be developing this new property we just purchased. We did go before the Conservation Commission and the TRC Technical Review Committee, and it was very reasonable. It wasn't as onerous as my board thought it was going to be. So
one of the things you hit on a couple times in your last statement, Honor, was willingness and volunteer. And I think one of the things people have a misconception is that we've got a target list. You've got a list. The Open Lands Committee has created a list. We have to buy these pieces of land. And that's just not the case.
No.
There is a two-way transaction. It's not a knock, knock, can we buy your land? It's a,
No.
We're available. We're a resource. If you want to sell your property, please call us.
Right.
And I think that that's one of those things that people don't necessarily understand.
Right.
And I've heard you say over the years, there's no target. There's no goal because we don't want to say once we've hit the plateau, we're done.
No percentage goal, right?
Right.
Some communities have determined, once we hit 30% or once we hit 25%, we're done. And I was like, well, it's up to the landowner to decide. And what if the ones that early on, the Open Lands Committee did sit down and were like, ooh, that's a nice property. That's over 20 acres or whatever. But you could sit and rank and score all your properties. But until the landowner's ready, sit there and wait. You have to go with who's ready now.
And one of the things that's an overlap between the Open Lands and the Conservation Commission, when the Conservation Commission is looking at wetlands impacts, not all wetlands are built the same and not all have the same functional value. The same
Exactly.
with open lands preservation. Not every piece of open land is going to rank the same and have the same overall value. So you're really, it's subjective in some regards, but it's also looking at the overall quality, not quantity of protection.
You just reminded me of something. So a lot of people think, you guys are trying to gobble up all the land and take it away from the landowners. And I was like, actually, we have said no. Our criteria our ranking sheet is almost a tool to say no to people. It's like, it doesn't, we're not going to spend land use change tax funds and write grants and leverage outside funding to purchase something that doesn't really qualify for conservation.
Yeah, I would just add on to that over the last year, we've been working on a natural resources inventory.
Right.
To try to, in a way, do what you were just mentioning in terms of evaluating what's valuable,
right,
and what is worth saving and what we should be focusing on. And that's still a work in progress, but it really makes you sort of sit down and think,
right?
What are we really looking for here? What are we really shooting for? And then along with that, though, the public input of determining in a survey, what is the public's view of what we're trying to do? And how do they absorb what we're promoting and what our goals are in a meaningful way, and getting them to respond to and find out what that criteria are going to be.
Right.
It's, as I said, it's been a work in progress, but it still is moving along. Hopefully, to a conclusion, and we have some information, some data from the public in terms of what they would like to see done, and I think that's important.
As we wrap up, are there any things you want to make sure the listener hears or learns about your activities?
Yes, he
was that enthusiasm.
One that has been a concern of mine, and we discuss this almost every meeting, is the treescape, the urban treescape in Dover. And we can think back to years ago when Central Avenue, Lower Square, Upper Square were rebuilt and trees were planted in the sidewalk. And at the time, perhaps not enough consideration was given to what kind of tree you're going to put in that box.
Or the box itself.
So over time, the trees have grown and have kind of, in a way, overwhelmed the area where they are. Some are in decline. Some have died. and the boxes are empty. And it just changes the vibe, I think, as far as the streetscape is concerned downtown. So that's all by way of saying that over the last year, we're starting to replace trees in those boxes in cooperation with and with the help of the community services. And we've set a kind of an unofficial goal of doing 15 trees a year in terms of replacements, but also new ones in other parts of the core area, which I think can be nothing but a benefit to the overall look.
I am glad you brought that up, because I was actually going to bring it up that before he left, we had a conversation with Jackson Gaspare and Mark Colonna from Community Services about that replacement program. And I think it's a great example of how the Conservation Commission is thinking outside its normal box of permit reviews and things like that, and proactively saying, we need trees to survive. And so how do we get in the business of planting and promoting those? And I remember when in 2017, when we interviewed John Storr, who's the Director of Community Services, in the interview, we said sort of like, hey, what's one of the things you want to work on? And he said, I was walking around the community trying to get a sense for what I'd be getting involved with when if I got hired. And he said, I'm walking around all these empty tree boxes downtown, and I'm thinking, that's a low-hanging fruit. We need to work together to make sure that the material below grade actually can support trees. And B, why don't we have a tree there? And so I think it's been a great initiative, and we need to tout that more often. I'm really glad you brought that up.
And we're cognizant this time of making sure we select the right species.
Yeah.
Right.
Because not all trees are suitable for all
urban environments. Yeah.
And but there is a list of ones that would do well in an urban landscape such as we have.
I'm very excited to hear that, because I served on the Forest Management Committee where that whole project came out of, as a formally trained UNH community tree steward, or whatever you call me. But and John was like, can we get some trees in the ground this year? We couldn't do it that first year. But so I'm very excited that's
it's a great program.
We've also explored the idea of a pocket forest.
that came out of
We're still trying to find a good location for one. We maybe have a sense of what that might be like when you look at the project up by Woodland Park School. And when the Silver Street was rehabbed and rebuilt, then that little component of it was put in place. And it was just, I think, quite attractive as far as the mix of habitat and plantings that were out there. It also has been brought to our attention that it needs some work, and hopefully we're going to be able to do something like that. The question is, who's actually responsible for it? Is it the city? Is it the school district? We're trying to resolve that, trying to get some answers to that and work on that. But it's a good example of what can be done around town. So you have more than the sidewalks and streets in terms of your landscape.
Oh, no. What can you tell us about the Open Lands Committee that we haven't already talked about?
Well, it's interesting you should ask. So the Open Lands Committee seems to be quietly under the radar, working, slogging through, conserving properties, working with landowners, writing grants, working with the city. And sometimes we're like, oh, we should do a snowshoe walk. Well, there hasn't been snow for us to do it lately, unfortunately. Or a hike, or put something on Facebook, or hold an event, or go to Apple Harvest Day. But we're not sure what our message is. It's like, we want the public to know what we're doing. Yeah. We're not trying to be secretive or anything. It's very transparent, and they can come to our meetings. But we used to have an outreach and education committee when a lot of us were a lot younger and had more time. And we would like more volunteers for two things: for outreach and education, planning an event, organizing it, getting people out. I used to monitor all the easements. Those are the most beautiful parts of our city. And it's like, oh my gosh, the highway is like 400 feet over and you can't even hear it. So we're looking for people to join the committee if they're into social media, planning events, organizing walks. We've done full moon snowshoe walks.
I say the full moon ones are fun.
Those are fun. And we usually have hot chocolate. Those are a lot of fun. And some of us who've been on it for a while have not had the time or the capacity to continue doing that, because I help with a lot of the projects, managing the projects and working with the actual landowners. And then the other is easement monitoring. Every property that you conserve, as the easement holder, you're obligated to walk it at least once a year and just make sure the landowner, and sometimes when it's the original landowner who granted the easement, we usually don't have a problem. But sometimes when it changes hands and,
People aren't aware of the committee.
they're not aware of it. Sometimes we don't know it changed hands. We just want to make sure they're aware of the allowed uses and the restrictions, because it is a little different than just owning a property outright that you can do whatever you want. And that we need more. We used to have a easement monitoring team leader, and that was Bruce Batchelder, and he moved. And before that, it was Dave Price, and he moved out of town. So we need a new easement monitoring team leader, or just more easement monitoring members who can go out during their free time and walk a property.
It's a guy named Bird that might have free time on his hands. You should call him.
I should call him. I think I know him. Steve Bird. We miss him.
Well, I appreciate you both coming in and sharing your experiences and the activities your groups are involved with. It's been a good chat, and I appreciate you coming in today.
It was great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. Be able to share the information, let folks know what we're up to.
Have a great day. Dover has a wealth of history in its over 400 years of existence. Coming up, Mike Gillis is going to share some of that history with us.
Dover's early firefighters were mostly volunteers, organized as companies. Many of these were called hook and ladder companies, consisting of fire apparatus that carried long ladders to reach the upper levels of buildings and hooks used to tear down ceilings, doors, and obstructions. Dover's oldest hook and ladder company was formed this week on December 21st in 1831. The company was initially called simply the Volunteer Hook and Ladder Company. 3 decades later, the volunteer group would be called the Invincible Hook and Ladder Company, and later Lincoln Hook and Ladder Company No. 1. Despite the name changes, the company continued to respond to fires, and by the early 1900s, was the oldest company to operate continually since its formation. This hook and ladder company would also carry on a tradition every year of its existence, an annual banquet. These banquets were renowned in Dover and often attracted news coverage from throughout the region. Foster's Daily Democrat would write in its coverage of the 1911 banquet, quote, "Everyone knows, and history long ago indicted it in indelible ink, that the members of the Hooks have a reputation to subduing qualifications that cannot be excelled. Hospitable, open-hearted, and liberal too, when festive occasion comes, they lead the van every time, and as successful as have been the other 79 preceding banquets, that of last night showers excelsior upon the captain down." At its 80th annual banquet on December 21st, 1911, the Knights of Columbus Hall was packed with hundreds of people, including many of the city's dignitaries. The banquet began at 8 that evening, and after an hour of socializing, guests were treated to a feast, followed by remarks from the mayor, city clerk, city treasurer, the city messenger, and, of course, Captain Charles Clark. Then it was on to the entertainment, which consisted of music, comedy, and tall tales, all of which lasted well beyond midnight. By 1924, the Lincoln Hook and Ladder Company was the oldest horse-drawn fire apparatus in New England. That same year, though, it would retire its horse-drawn ladder truck, built in 1889, and begin to use its first motorized ladder truck. The fire department planned a large field day that year to celebrate the new motorized truck. The Lincoln Hook and Ladder Company would celebrate its 100th anniversary in 1931 and would continue to be recognized as one of the oldest fire companies in the state for many more years. Today, Dover's fire department is known as Dover Fire and Rescue and remains one of the state's oldest fire departments.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.